So, Lorna Wilson, Lorna, I've got to say, I'm going to try not to slip into any worship consciousness because we're trying to clear that kind of density as a collective, I hope. But really, truly, from my heart, with humility, I do see you as a kind of oracle in the flesh, a legacy of wisdom, if you will. And that really has been acquired from your extensive vision quests, from your enriching life experience, and your exquisite, extraordinary repertoire of regressions, which you've performed over decades. And that's given you, in my opinion, a really profound perspective on all things spiritual, on what it means to be human, on how to heal humanity, and on the unified field. Lorna, you are a QHHT practitioner, you're a hypnotherapist, you're a shaman, and you're also the author of the book, Healing Journeys Through Quantum Realities, which I've read twice. Thank you for that body of knowledge because it continues to bestow gifts to me. Given your knowledge of the subconscious mind, which I've learned from you is a living library of the accumulation of our life experiences, I want to deep dive into mind control, MK Ultra style. You talk about trauma being a trance, and I think that's a really important point. I'm wondering, are some of us subconsciously acquiescing to a covert evil control agenda? I mean, if you look out there, you see threats that feel very real. May it be mass masking or enforced inoculations, AI and transhumanism, 5G, poisoning our food through GMOs, chemtrailing, the totalitarian tiptoe, communist takeover. You've got big tech censorship. I mean, you lost your Facebook group recently. That was such a bummer. Not to mention ritual satanic abuse, human and child sex trafficking, and pedophilia. So, Lorna, my question to you is, are we under a trauma-induced Luciferian Ahrimanic spell?
You've said a lot of things, and there's so much that can be said on everything.
Okay.
But I'm going to start, just so that the listeners also can start at a base idea. So if you imagine, we're thinking in terms of consciousness now and words like the matrix. And so what we're recognizing through consciousness exploration, and there's loads of different types, but what we're recognizing is that our consciousness doesn't die, there is no end, and we have lots of interactions that are quite shamanic in the sense that they're imagery, they're bizarre, they might include other beings, they might include other realities. And when we're in those spaces, we function and they're natural to us. So imagine, for example, that to create the Earth life system, and there's loads of other planets and systems, there's just no way that this is the only one. And the subconscious and people in their sessions access so many different. I mean, we hear in the New Age community, the Pleiades, Sirius, Orion, the basic ones, but there is vast ones that don't even have names that we can even pronounce. So imagine that for this particular system, that things are set in place. Imagine, for example, with this hand, this is how I like to explain it. So this hand represents our spiritual self, and we can call that all kinds of labels. We can call that soul, the light, but what we know from a basic scientific sense is that it's consciousness, and consciousness is in everything. Animals, nature, everything's measurable from a point of consciousness. And so imagine that to come, and so it's not got any form. It comes into a form and expresses through that, and this particular form we're in is called humans. And so when you're locked into the human matrix, you have filters on your consciousness that's going to allow you to interact in that system organically. For example, our body, cells, everything is made of the same composition as the earth, minerals and all that stuff. So to function, and so therefore they all hold their own vibrational frequencies. So frequency-wise, vibrationally, energetically, we are locked into this matrix. And this matrix, if you think of video games, has to have challenges. And the challenges, I view them as obstacles. And the obstacles, all of that is going to lead a person back to themselves eventually. And so I like to think of, there's an infinity symbol, that's the figure 8. But how I see that is laying down on its side. And to me, that represents symbolically how we're always searching outside ourselves, looking. We think everyone's got an answer or something that we don't. And that search will eventually lead us back to ourselves. And then we have to find within that we're searching for. And so the obstacle course is there. And I've had to come to the conclusion it's allowed to be there. It's meant to be there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. In other words, at some point, we have to accept what is, because until we accept it, we can't change it, because we don't realize we can change it because we're locked into the filters. And so all we're seeing is what's in front of us, what the naked eye can see. And the filters are things like family patterns, cultural beliefs, where you're born in the world, your astrological charts, numerology, all those kind of things. I mean, if you think about it this way, even if you did a silly in the newspaper psychological test, always when we do those, it's like, oh my God, I can, accept what it says because, I find meaning in it. But it's simply because the human being, as far as I can tell, is a composition of consciousness packages and templates. And those templates are locked into your system, your neurological system, and imprinted on your consciousness. And the final, well, not really final, but one of the real close to the final stages of that being locked into your thinking and how you're going to see the world will be what happens during your mother's pregnancy, how she feels, her emotions, all of that. Because what happens with the fetus is you're completely saturated in mom's emotions. You know what's going on with dad, but we interpret it. So for the first maybe 30 something years of our lives, we're always reacting. And so we're wiring beliefs into our brains. And that reaction starts as soon as we're locked into that mother's womb situation. It doesn't matter whether the soul's completely in there or, there's beliefs that come in at 3 months, pre-birth, whatever. I don't know that there's a hard and fast rule as to how and when, but once we're assigned that mother's energy vibrationally, because think about it this way, like Tesla says about creation, 3 simple things. Well, I don't know that they're simple, but 3 simple things to remember: energy, vibration, and frequency. So we're locked into, plugged into, wired into mother's vibrational frequencies and fathers. So whatever has gone on in their belief systems and their experiences, that's going to have an effect on how we perceive the world. And so what you describe as all of the dark stuff that's going on, and it is dark because it's bringing out the shadow of the planet and individuals, it's the accumulation of this whole cycle that we've been in and that we're ending, of all the stuff that's ever happened in your family lineage, in your vibrational fields, in your consciousness. And it's not so much that it's your consciousness and all down to you, because you're just an aspect of your soul. So it's in whatever the other aspects, call them past lives or parallel lives or whatever, but whatever the other aspects have that vibrationally can be released in this system, and all releases in this system gets added to the collective consciousness. So every time you heal, it goes into the collective consciousness. Every time you do something that pulls it down into the shadows, it goes in. And that's how thought forms get very easily available to us. We only need to think one negative thought and it's like, whoa, within 10 minutes, all the negative things that's ever happened in my life just suddenly shows up. Or it could be the positive. And it's because we're constantly feeding thought forms. Now, if you imagine what's happening in the world, it's all masculine energy. It's about service to self, me, me, me. And that masculine energy, it's all about the head. And it's also locked very much into our original brainstem, the reptilian brainstem. So you hear reptilian stuff all the time. And the reptilian, our original brainstem, is about survival, me, me, me. rituals. And so if you think about masculine energy, think about the human form, for example. And hopefully I'm answering your question, but there's just so much information.
Yeah, totally you are.
So think about the human form. We're in a duality system, and it's represented by two physical forms. Doesn't matter what everyone's going on about gender, but we're looking at two physical forms, the masculine male body and the feminine, the female. Look at masculine bodies. Everything is on the outside.
Yes.
On the feminine body, it's on the inside. And so the masculine, the mind, is always doing things externally, because technically the mind is designed to make us survive life. What are we going to do? And it's always linear, one step after another. And the feminine is just this intuition of, I don't know why I feel the way I do, but I just feel to do this, or this comes to me. And it's always multitasking because it's receptive. And it gives birth in the dark, in the sense of it's not, I got to do this, turn around 3 times and say a couple of Hail Marys and then this will happen. Or if I pray, do you know what I mean? All those things, that's a masculine mind of, if I do things externally, I will accomplish what I desire. Whereas the feminine, think about the birth process. It grows life within, out of our control. And it's not just about the birth of a human form, but even the birth of our ideas, the birth of our creativity, our self-expression. And so what you're seeing in the world is all of the density of a long-term corruption of masculine energy that has distorted the duality that we're in. But at the same time, we're seeing the end result of it. But by the time we see these things, the process is already way beyond what we can imagine, because with our physical eyes, we can only really see what's in front of us. So this exposure has been surfacing for a long time, and we've already moved beyond the exposure. We just don't physically know that. And we don't know that because some people, it's a duality system, remember? Some people automatically know that. They're seeing everything about life on a positive, and they're wishing no one harm because everyone's on their own journey. And then the other ones are catching up with their fears that have been there. And the biggest fear I've discovered, and I found it in myself as well. Oh my gosh, when I was 4 years old, didn't even know I had that, But anyway, the biggest fear we all have is the fear of death.
Yes.
Because to the physical mind, when we wink out of this system, it's like, actually, it's like when my Facebook thing was censored. I woke up one morning and it was like 15 years of my pictures, family and all that stuff just wiped out. And I was like, wow, that's what death feels like. It's just like everything about you, your history, to the conscious mind, gone. And I was fine with that because it gave me something to contemplate. So, they can do what they want because they can't wipe me out. But anyhow, most people's fear, it doesn't matter what their story, underneath it is a fear of death, or a fear of annihilation, or a fear of the unknown. And that's why doing past life work is so brilliant, because you can access different lifetimes and move beyond the death. And, most people are like they float away, they drift away, or people might go and look around their village and say, wow, it's not as big as I thought it was. But for the most part, it's like an easy thing. And so the conscious mind doesn't know that. And that's why, for example, near-death experiences, when they get into the inner worlds, it's like they do not want to come back. Something about love, their kids, or some heart thing pulls them back. But to us who don't have that experience, you watch too many movies, the monsters are under the bed, or certain religions tell you that's it. So there's a lot of stored beliefs within our collective consciousness that are out of balance, but they're meant to be. So if people gain a spiritual understanding, they would ride through these times without investing their energy into manifesting what they actually don't want to experience.
It goes back to what you focus on, you feed, doesn't it? And you're hardwired for your life. I think you've said that before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about going beyond the shedding of the patriarchy, looking at the journey through the birth canal. You talked about a theory you had that each and every one of us have a kind of feeling signature about coming in, and some are excited and they see it as an adventure, and some are really scared and they see it as something really, really frightening. And so we all kind of come in with that imprint, if you will, or template, filter, as you call it.
It's a part of the filter that's going to create, because remember, we're formless beings. Consciousness is formless, and it gets put together in a construct for the experience.
Yes.
And so those kind of feelings and thoughts would only come if it connects with other things in that particular soul's history. So it's not going to apply to everyone. So, for example, at the beginning of each cycle, at least this is my understanding, at the beginning of each cycle, souls start a process of whatever they're going to learn through. Let's just say abuse of power, or something connected with the heart, or something with healing, or whatever. They're going to have, or the soul's going to have many lifetimes around that particular topic. And then by the end of the cycle, and it's also planetary, it's way beyond our control. Now, I'm not an astrologer, and to be honest, when my astrologer friends send me charts, they just look really pretty, but I have no idea what all the colored lines mean. And it's like,
that's next lifetime for me, astrology.
Yeah. You're just not meant to know everything about everything.
Exactly.
Just, a little bit about this, a little bit about that, so you can connect some dots. But anyhow, so there's something cosmically happening that, and it's not like, an event or any of that new age stuff. I'm talking about how the planets move, and something to do with things of that nature. Let's just leave it that way. And so whatever, and the planets represent different things, I guess, electromagnetic energies that impact on us. So we're kind of in fact, the Hindus call it the different stages, yugas, Y-U-G-A, or in the West, we'd speak of Iron Age, Silver Age, and Golden Age. Everyone's looking for the Golden Age. But I think that has to do with something to do with how the planets are, whether there's an expansion or compression or something. I don't quite know. Those aren't the right terms. But anyhow, so when things are squeezed, it's like where we are being really like squeezed at the crucible of get that gold, get that learning, get that freedom out. So I always think of, the Vesica Pisces symbol. It's like two circles and they're pulling away from each other. Well, I just feel like we're all in the little center point. And some people are kind of choosing to circle back into the old because they haven't got it yet. And others are moving into the new. So it's not like, the two earths are splitting, maybe that might have been a symbolic way people perceive things. But it's about soul's choices, because some of us will move on into other realities, and some of us will continue learning through whatever we're learning through. Yes. And the conscious mind, or everyday mind, people will be like, oh, I'm never coming back. I've come to the conclusion you don't really have a choice.
Yes, that was my next question. Are we living on a prison planet?
I've come to that conclusion, yes. In the sense that we're locked into this matrix and there's no way out until you get out. That we have controllers who are clamping us down and imprisoning us, and we only break through our own consciousness and choices. We have very little free will, because if we did, we'd really just have the jobs that we want, or the lifestyle we want, or the families we want. The law of attraction isn't what it says it is, because otherwise we could just think ourselves into having things. So there's limitations put on us. It's like a video game called the Earth Life System. And whoever's running it, they play both the light side and the dark side. And I smile at that because people like to think that they're very different. But imagine that that's just a part of, it's like the yin yang symbol. It's just a part of the system. And the dark side, or the shadow side, or the side that's not so visible, is what's within us that's deeply buried, that it's given the opportunity to bring out, if that makes sense.
It does. So it all goes back to the subconscious.
One time in a ayahuasca ceremony, I asked the question, what is, is there Satanism or what is all that and stuff? And she said to me, the satanic forces are neutral and they bring out what's within you.
Wow.
And I got it. Yeah, because there's other things around that.
Well, there's a lot of people that might need to hear that message right now. Because that's a story that's floating around in the field at the moment that is tripping.
Well, if you think about sorry to interrupt you, but if you think about going back to your question, what's going on in the world, it's bringing out the drama, because it's all theater, they're all stories. The drama is bringing out, whether it's to do with the election, whether it's to do with the vaccine, whether it's to do with the lockdown, it's bringing out what's within people. And we don't just go from 0 to 100 with rage if it's not in us somewhere.
Yes.
Do you know? So we've been in a duality system, and the way I see it is there's a third force, and that third force is balance. It's the center. It's neither one polarity or the other. And that third force is only really accomplished when we integrate our own inner masculine and feminine. And by that, I mean, if you think about Tesla's 3 things, energy, vibration, and frequency. So masculine and feminine, we recognize it, we think, because we see a feminine, masculine body. But when you think of it as energy, it's creative forces. It's out how the energy works, how it manifests, how it expresses itself. And so we have that within us. Jung would have called it the anima and animus. That's psychoanalytical, politically correct speak. But what we think of just in an everyday sense is our left brain and right brain, or our masculine and feminine, our mother and father. Those are the dualities. And what's coming together is a balance between the two. Because what masculine energy does is it's a forward thinking. It knows how to accomplish things, to analyze, to protect. I mean, in a healthy sense, if it's done, is right, to protect and all of that stuff. And what the feminine does is it's nurturing, it's receptive, it knows how to nourish life, it knows how to, it's all about the continuity of life. And so if you think about the individual, that's represented within us, within our father and our mother. And so whatever's gone on in our childhood and however we perceive our parents, and in some cases, however much we reject them, one or the other or both, is how much we reject ourselves and how much we're not coming into our own balance. Because masculine is also represented by the head and the feminine by the body and the heart. And so if we're living in our head and we're driven masculine, then, and usually to the negation of our feminine, then we tend to find that we just can't get and accomplish and keep and do the things we want because we're literally out of balance. So the other thing go on.
Do you believe that distorted belief systems are the real virus?
Well, I think that they definitely are, but it's not about the distorted belief system. It's how the belief system came into place. That's a distortion of energy. So think about the matrix, and they feed in viruses. Think about your computer system. Yeah. They feed in viruses, and they'll feed in consciousness viruses, mind viruses. And then people will accept those as their reality, their truth. It's like we're all living in a shared space called planet Earth, an energetic field or multi-fields, but we're all coming from different places and we're all going to different places, and we're not composed the same, though we look the same. And we might live in the same communities, but when you go into each person's inner world, it's completely unique to them. And it's a composition of all of their soul's experiences and why they're here at this time and their perception. So, yeah, they're definitely mind viruses.
Because I have a bone to pick with the mainstream media. after having been a cog on that wheel, by the way, that they're pushing so many false narratives that feel really fear-based, like fear porn, and super damaging to me. What would you say to that?
Well, think about it this way. Everyone's journey is an individual journey. So every single individual is accountable for what they do. So if you're the type of individual that is me focused, whether it's about your job, your income, your greed, your stature in life, whatever, you will go along and do the wrong things because you're doing it for self-satisfaction and gain. Whereas if you're not that type of a media person, your reporting won't be of that. So every single journey, every single one is individual, and every single one of us will be accountable not only for our actions, but how much joy did we take harming people compared to how much did we just give just for the sake of giving because our hearts just felt to do that. So that's what's measurable. It has nothing really to do with what other people are doing. That's just us blaming, projecting, not taking the full responsibility. But imagine if the people just took responsibility for themselves and their health. Everything, the show would be over.
Yes.
If a person was not looking for someone to save them with an injection because they've denied their own biological system, their own immune system, their own connection to their life, to their heart, to their body, then of course they're going to get dragged along with whatever's going there, because that's designed to drag them along.
Yes.
Think about it this way. The people that are dying in all of this, I assure you, as soon as they've died, within moments, this system's gone. They're like, whew, I'm free. And then we're left behind saying, oh, look what they did to them and blah, blah, blah. There is no death. And once you realize that from a consciousness perspective, you can start making choices to live.
To live. And that's why I love the word sentient so much. I'm so glad you touched on the Maxine's. I'm trying to talk in code, but meh. And you told me a story recently about being visited by the spirit of your mother, and she gave you a message about Maxine's. I think it was on
Oh,
the
no, that wasn't, that wasn't that. That was, I see how you've got my mother in there.
Yes.
Well, just very briefly, you don't learn a lot in life if you have a wonderful childhood. So I always had a very unhappy mother, and I thought I just worked on her forever and ever. And then in the background, a number of years ago, ayahuasca just kind of kept calling me. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to go and see and experience whatever it is. But what happened in that session, that first session, it was absolutely amazing. It was just pure love, but nothing to do with my mother at all. But what happened was, just out of the blue of all of this love, she'd been showing me things that connect us from divine love. So I was seeing all of this beautiful, just amazing, beautiful, like colors and streams and lines, and it was just beautiful. And she was saying to me that, she said, get rid of concepts and belief systems. And she showed me why. And it was like these gold scissors, like these laser scissors, just came out and just snipped away a bit of us from the divine love and just encapsulated us in a belief or a concept. And then she said, you'll have to live that because that's what you've created. That's your experience. And then, and she said, whenever life kicks your butt, just fall back into love. So it was just really, it was fabulous, that first session. I would have never gone back if I never had.
And it was Mother Ayahuasca. Yeah. I get that.
It was amazing. I've never been spoken to with like that ever, a loving mother. It was brilliant. But out of the blue, I mean, this was back in 2009 or 2010. So it was before all this vaccine hype. But out of the blue, she said, and vaccines disconnect you from divine love. And then I saw this snip came out, and I was like, wow, where did that come out of the blue? Because everything else was about, personal things and whatever. But yeah, and so I could see that. And also, very importantly, after that, I mean, because I used to be in esoteric groups and whatever, because because I've got this curiosity for information, really.
So do
but
I.
After that, because I just want to know, how does it work? But after that, I just couldn't even get into concepts and beliefs. And it was just fabulous for that reason. It was like very liberating.
Yes, I feel a sense of relief just hearing you say it.
Mm-hmm. Very freeing.
Are you cool to do a quick fire round to debunk some kind of common spiritual stereotypes, or?
Well, let's go for it. I won't intend necessarily to debunk them unless they deserve to be debunked.
Awesome.
Or I might tell you my perception of it instead.
Well, I think there are a lot of mainstays. A lot of us feel like, by definition, we feel they're absolutes, and maybe they're not. And part of my journey has been gaining clarity through the likes of you on some of these concepts. So the first one is karma. Is Earth a karmic retribution machine?
I think Earth is different things for different people. Remember, we're coming from different places. So there are a lot of people that have no choice in the sense of energetically they have to be here. And I've had people in sessions, including myself actually, that want to come in as a male or female and they're told, no, you can't, you have to be the other. So there already you don't have a choice. And so for some people, it might be that it's about rebalancing things. But I hear different stories from the subconscious of people as to why they're here. And oftentimes they might have to work through things from their childhood or their history from a soul's perspective. But sometimes they're just here for others. Sometimes children are born to come in to help their parents. And I don't mean through being disabled or anything. It's just that, they're here. For example, this lady the other day, one of her stresses was about her daughter, what's going to happen with all the, the COVID and stuff and fears and future and all that stuff. And so I had her go to a lifetime, if she had one, that is, connected to her daughter. And she was absolutely shocked to access a lifetime where her daughter was her older sister and her guide and her helper. And then when she dialogued with her, she was coming in to help her in this particular lifetime. She's just had that much wisdom. But the thing is, we look at children and we think they're little, so they don't know anything. Sometimes they're much older in soul knowledge and wisdom than, older people.
My little ones are so much more crystalline than I, and I'm aware of it.
Mm-hmm. So in some sense it can be, but I would say to people, if you view Earth in that sense, then all you're doing is you're creating that reality for yourself.
And you're locking yourself in the
You're locking that into that belief. Think about it like just snipping yourself away from divine love, and you're now locked into a concept and a belief.
And that's related.
And that's why we are designed to change our mind, because changing our mind changes the neuroplasticity of the brain and it opens neural pathways. And from then on, we have a bigger sense of expansion and awareness.
Oh, I love that. We are designed to change our mind. Oh, freedom.
Absolutely.
Thank God for that.
That separates us from animals.
Yes, it does. Yes, good point.
And that's why everything is okay in the moment until you change your mind that it's not.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, it's actually along the lines of karma. You've kind of already addressed it, but is Earth a great cosmic lesson plan? Is it a school? Is it a boot camp for us souls?
I don't like to think of it as a school because, you hear the word school and for the most part, everyone automatically gets negative and hates it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that shows up from people's subconscious mind when they're in hypnosis and they ask questions like, there's all this crap been happening in my life because it's, I got bad karma. And their subconscious will be like, karma? No, it's giving you the tools for what is to come. And so a lot of ancient spiritual beliefs are flawed. Think about it this way. All beliefs come from the conscious mind, the surface layer of the mind of any human being. There might be cosmic truths, but let's just look at it from our basic belief systems. And so imagine in some ancient time in my village or my town, I had an epiphany the light opened up and I had like, whoa, this big epiphany. And I have a village meeting and I'm telling the villagers, da da da, and this and that. And everyone is listening, but just taking what they can relate to. And so some people will just make a belief system around that they can relate to. Someone else will take it and make a religion. Someone else will make a spiritual discipline. And so they haven't taken the totality of what the person was saying. They've just taken and accepted and therefore disconnected it from the whole, because energy is meant to move. That person who had the epiphany, it was an opening that would lead to other things. But what we tend to do is we tend to finalize things and lock them down, as opposed to allowing the energy to move. And so going back to your first questions, what we're seeing now is all the energy that's been locked down moving. And so it looks like chaos.
Yes, but my guides are celebrating. They think this is fantastic.
And you have to get to that place within yourself, because
Yes.
if you do, then your whole life changes. Everything will change automatically. And that's what people are afraid of, because it's like, well, suppose I believe it and then tomorrow this happens. It's because they don't actually believe it. And so what belief is something of the mind. It's masculine. What knowing is of the body. You know it. You feel it in every cell.
Yes.
That's knowing. Beliefs, they're masculine. It's all of the head. They're not true. And that's why the ancient real spiritual teachers would always tell you to have your own direct experience, because then you feel it. Then your body knows it. And so with all the stuff going on in the world, going back to that prison planet and all that stuff, that's all masculine. And so what they're doing, or what's happening, is they are preventing people from being comfortable in their body, because you just don't feel good, and this has happened and that has happened. And that's because they have occult teachings from ancient times, and the way into the spirit, into the inner world, is through the feminine. It's through your body. That's how you get out of your body into other realities. That's why when out-of-body explorations happen, the body will go through vibrations as it's separating. It will go through pulses. It will go through all kinds of stuff. And if you're able to breathe through that, you can be out of your body, because you cannot get to the higher self, the higher realities, without going through your body. That's a feminine. It's creation. It's expansion. Think of the void. It's dark. It gives birth to all potential and possibilities. But the masculine, it can't. It's not designed to do that.
I have absolutely arrived at the belief that enlightenment is embodiment. So I really appreciate you taking time to really clarify that for all of us, because I think it's such an important concept. Going back to the spiritual beliefs and ancient texts in particular, I was going to ask you about the classic ancient text, the Bible. Is it metaphoric? Is it archetypal? Because I know you work a lot with archetypes.
I think it's a mix of different things. Now, years ago, I had a quest to just really understand things. So because a lot was going on in my life, I just needed to understand. And so at the time, I got, I think it was about 8 different types of Bibles. Like, I found them. I ended up donating them to a charity shop. I can't believe I did that, because in later years I thought, I should have kept them, because some of them were quite unique. I had nuns giving me this, and I'd find them in secondhand places.
Wow.
And so when you read the different Bibles that haven't got the books cut out, like the book of Judith, there's women in the Bible besides Jezebel.
And the book Esther, of Thomas that tells us to feel.
And the Maccabees, and then there's the Ethiopian one that follows the Queen of Sheba and her story and hers. So it's completely different. And if you look at the Old Testament, there's 2 versions. And so the Bible was written by humans, of course. And if I'm even let's just say I think I'm a channel, or I think I'm hearing the voice of God, or, whatever, and I'm saying it is, that's going through the filters of my own consciousness. And I'm going to interpret it accordingly. However, when you look at the New Testament, even though there's lots of different writers and things have been left out, it speaks more about psychology. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Don't throw stones at glass houses. So there's a lot of psychology in the New Testament that I quite like, because it's just classic psychology. But the Old Testament is very violent and aggressive. However, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, the background, there's a book called The Genius of the Few by Christian O'Brien. And he's died now, but he had lived in that part of the world and worked there and knew the people and for many years. So he translated the Sumerian texts, which are completely different from Zecharia Sitchin, completely different. And when you read what he's translated, because he hasn't put a Christian bent in it or any of that stuff, when you read it, everything about it makes sense. Everything about even fallen angels, because it's not what you think. Even about heaven and earth, because it's not what you think. And it's fascinating.
I've got to read it. Right, let's back up.
Absolutely fascinating.
Let's back up to the quick fire round, because what are fallen angels, really?
Well, there's a lot of beliefs around that, but I'll tell you what in the Christian O'Brien version is, and I kind of like that one. So when it's described that Enoch went up to heaven, what heaven was the highlands, the mountains. And what hell was considered was in the craters of the volcanoes. And so these beings had lost their planet, and they were looking for a place to inhabit. And they found Earth, and they found it had enough moisture and all that stuff. So they set up what they were going to do, like for civilization and for, planting roots for life. And some of the helpers that they brought were messing about with their projects. And so they had to cast them into the craters of the volcano so they could keep them imprisoned until the off-planet guards and people came to get them. And who angels were scientists. And they were called angels when it was translated. And
well,
I mean,
I've seen the correlation between angel and angle. I don't know if that feeds into what you're saying at all.
Well, I don't know about, because words have meaning and similarities. But the way I've not explained it is good, and it's got so much details. It's just fabulous. It's my
I'll have to give it a read.
Book.
Oh, and, man. Yeah. Brilliant suggestion.
Yes. So I like that concept. I've never been into fallen angels and all that stuff. And I've never been into the Old Testament stuff because I'm a tomboy. I challenge that stuff. What do you mean, women this, women that? Do you know what I mean? So I'm hardwired to challenge that. So no, I don't buy into all that fallen angel. That's just another virus in the matrix.
100%. What about
throw that in and get people frightened and bring out their worst, or let them choose their light? What about what? Sorry,
yes. Another virus in the matrix. So what about timelines?
Oh, timelines. I love them. I don't think timelines are as simple as what they say in, YouTube videos. Oh, you just have to jump a timeline. However, how I love timelines is imagine that in your life or your childhood, you were happily going along, the innocent child, everything's wonderful. And then some catalyst change happened. Let's just say your parents got divorced when you were 6. Or the house burnt down, or something happened, you moved away and lost your family, your friends, and something changes in you because of that change. Somehow we often lose a part of ourselves because it's left anchored into what we've lost. And so we can re-access those timelines where we were that happy, innocent person. And so in the sense, whatever we've come in with, it's all factored in our life and energy fields and stuff. we can reconnect and pick up the parts of us that we've rejected, that we've just, we're just not that playful, innocent person. And so in that sense, definitely.
Would you call that quantum leaping then?
Well, I'm more shamanic, so I just call that, I don't come up with names really. I just call it, it's like soul loss, reconnecting with parts of your soul. I think of it more in that sense.
I like
rather
that.
than
reclaiming various fragmented aspects of self.
Yeah, it's like a soul retrieval. It's like, imagine that you're born, you're sent into life with this full potential of all of you. But because the adults in your life control you, because that's what adults do, that's why we're reacting all the time, because adults tell us what to do, when to get up, what we got to do. And we don't always like that, because sometimes they don't see us, the person, but, we have to fall into line to their expectations. And so oftentimes we will disconnect and lose parts of ourselves, or just kind of fragment. And so in that sense, soul retrieval or reconnecting with that opens up your full potential, as well as your happiness, because it's like, wow, I don't have this kind of emptiness, or this something that people can trigger, or these things I can't understand about myself.
Yes.
So it's about wholeness.
Wholeness. Okay, that gets me into higher selves. Mm-hmm. What is your take on a higher self and connecting with that aspect of self?
Well, one of the things I've learned is that every lifetime has its own higher self. And it was described to me as such. So imagine the full potential of the soul. Think of it like, let's just say it's described like a ball of light. Let's just say like the sun. And then with the rays, how kids draw a picture of the sun with the rays. So the rays will represent souls going out into experience. And there could be many different souls aspects on the ray, different timelines, different experiences. But let's just say that part of you that is projected outwards, we'll call that your ego, because it's the composition of your individuality. Whatever is the gatekeeper and the caretaker of that soul's part of the aspect will have its own higher self. And so higher selves are what connects us to the part of us who is never incarnated.
Am I a higher self to other lower selves?
Absolutely, because we're always bringing up into the light, balance, harmony, love, whatever terms we come up with, the lower parts of ourselves and the lower parts of existence, because that's how it works. Think of existence as always, right, so Earth is described like a torus. So remember, I think of the infinity symbol laying flat, representing us in our search, just going out, looking, and coming back. So if you stand that 8 upright and squish it, it becomes a torus. And so there's always this center point, this still point.
Is that 0 point?
Yeah, I think of it as that. I'm not a chemist or physicist or anything, but for simple speak. So all the experiences are always feeding in and coming back and feeding in. Yeah. And if you think in terms of like fractals, then our experiences are always dividing or changing or shifting. And it doesn't have to take something big to change it. And so what we gain and learn, it has to go somewhere. So it will go and pick up the lower vibrations. That's why I think mediums or people that do out-of-body exploration and discover beings on the other side or guides always are used to do rescue work. Do you know what rescue work is? It's like rescuing the souls that are trapped or haven't moved on. Yes. And so that's an example of how we're always having to help those. And there's this constant flux and movement. But what we try to do when we're in human form is we try to make things become still rather than allowing them to move.
Yes, that's true.
It's like holding on. life will take you where you have to learn to let go, or eventually you have to learn to let go to allow something else. Whether you let go of all your sorrows, or let go of your regrets, or let go of the tight rein you have on, got to hold on to this or you might lose it. It's about the letting go. I think life is about letting go.
Yes, I agree. Here's a narrative for you that I want clarity on. Do you believe that gray aliens are humans from the future who have taken the cyborg timeline, so to speak, or become a match to it, however you want to look at that, and lost their soul, so to speak, and are coming back to try to reclaim it?
No.
Don't buy into that.
No. Gray souls, or grays with souls, do not have the right to control any human who's a creative being, because that's how we're designed. Everything about us is about creating, whether it's through self-expression, whether it's through manifesting. So, whoever's running this system isn't going to allow gray beings to come in. And a lot of those, where a lot of those beliefs come from?
Where?
The astral planes. The astral planes, and they're put into people's reality systems by mischievous beings, or in some cases, the higher beings, I guess, will just allow these mind viruses to go in and just have a laugh. I mean, if you ever listen to what some remote viewers find, it's never what you kind of see or hear as spiritual truth. It's, It's not that. Or experiences that outer bodies explorers have had with beings that are vibrating differently, coming from different systems. You discover that all of our belief systems and things we think, it's meaningless in the cosmos. and in many cases it's ridiculous. Yeah. And think about it. Think about a system with a hive mind where everyone is able to tune in and feel everyone else's. Imagine if we were to even be a fly on the wall of our neighbors' minds, or just look at the stuff people are being fed through the media and TV.
Yeah.
What's going on in those minds? So no, it's the grays or no one's coming to do cyborg. Now we are moving into some who want to create transhumanism, yes, or robots and stuff, but those things have been tried before and they never last because it goes against everything that humans are. Why would you need a machine to tell you how to think in a system where you're designed to have to think for yourself? So what they've done is they've started out, and these are long-term plans. There is no real new age, it's the same old age plans. So they will always seed things because they have the people that are in power. They have the best psychologists, the best everything in any field, advising them about the human being. And so they know how to manipulate. You want to talk about MK Ultra? They know how to manipulate, but it doesn't have to be that extreme. It could just be with words. It could just be with what you're seeing and the type of programs and all of that stuff. And so what they did is they created, because if you think about it, words have their time and popularity. And so for a while, and it's still in the mix, the word introvert. And so they seeded that word at a time when young kids loved being glued because it's given them dopamine hits to their video games.
Yeah.
And in return, from pulling away from the world, they're allowed to think it's normal not to interact emotionally, no connection, because they're an introvert. And as time progressed, it's moved into social distancing, where the kids are quite happy social distancing. And they'll be quite happy being superhuman with a neural link and some superpower. So it's all very cleverly planned. But I have to say, there's not a soul, I don't think, that's come into this reality that didn't know in advance that things would be as they are.
I agree. And that's just one of the mainstays of the archonic grid, right? But the artificial and all that it includes, including artificial timelines, is finite.
So if you think even about artificial timelines, what do you think CERN was doing, or what the
Yes.
Mandela effect? So that's humans trying to do that. Those are human things. Those are not things coming from some higher beings that are, allowing this to happen because they're outside of time. If they want to look in on this planet, they can. They know what's going on. They don't have to do what they do. But the human does it because that's male thinking. Now, female thinking through the body, you would need to have to burst through, create something to go through dimensions. You can have out-of-body explorations. You could have deep meditation that takes you out of body into other places, even places on Earth, and report back accurately. That's what, the military was doing with remote viewing. And so you don't need to create a machine to discover other worlds. But if you plan on destroying the dimensions to allow other things to come in, well, that's a different story.
Well, that was a question I had. Does this go back to the atomic bomb when we split the atom? Did we rip the fabric of space-time?
I'd imagine something would have taken place at that time, but I don't really know. I've not really focused on that. But I do know from what people say from their subconscious mind that that was the dark ages of Atlantis. Very same things happening now. In fact, there's a book. It's quite thick, 2 volumes, written by a psychiatrist from what her patients were saying in hypnosis about creation and the planet and stuff. And so it's called The Amazing Human Journey by Dr. Shakuntala Modi. I've got it right here, actually. This one's volume 2.
Awesome. Sorry, another one I'm going to have to read. I see it.
I've got a virtual background. Everything gets distorted. But it's fabulous because she has actually detailed, even when we had alien intervention. And this is all stuff that her patients are saying. And she doesn't just write what one patient says. She writes what number of patients. So some of it is a bit repetitive from different angles. But what really I found really interesting was that different aliens came at different times, and they didn't come knowing others came. They just came from other different civilizations. And none of them came to make us slaves. They all came to help us to grow spiritually in some way. And so what they would do is they would, I guess, choose a group of people, and they would kind of put them out, like knock them out, transport them in like this mothership to a particular landmass that they could monitor. And what would happen is the people would eventually wake up and they'd be looking around and everything's changed. It's like, wow, different trees, different everything. And they'd be in sort of a momentary shock. And then they just get on with life. And so it's fascinating because the way she describes it is the actual transcripts of what people say and how they say it. And so it starts out with Lemuria, and then the bright ages of Atlantis, and then the dark ages, which is all the technology. And then what it does is people go back to the land and they don't want to have anything to do with technology. And then they moved on to like Malta and different places.
Malta. That's one of my favorite places on Earth.
Mm-hmm. So it's quite fascinating. And when you read it, it's believable. It's all very believable. Yeah, it's like, wow, because that makes sense. It takes the woo out and stuff. But it's far more detailed than I said.
So the therapeutic, cathartic takeaway from Atlantis coming up in the conversation is go back to the Earth and get away from the technology.
Right, because what technology is, it's doing things that the human can do if we weren't so manipulated. We could do telepathy. I mean, in some cases now, it is very active. I mean, imagine a mother who just has a strong sense of her child is in danger, and that child is in danger. So in those extreme senses, it's still very much a part of us. But just imagine if we weren't stressed every day, we could use our intuitive abilities, but people are so busy that they don't have time to actually just be. And so what happened was the Lemurians were very much that way, and the Atlanteans then discovered them And they're like, well, how do they doing these things? Like, how do they know what I'm thinking? And how do they this and that? And so then they started creating technology to do what the Lemurians were doing. And so it's detailed. It's a fascinating read, really. You could actually just open the book anywhere and it's like, wow, that page is brilliant.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm.
Is it about the integration of the Atlantean energies and the Lemurian energies, Atlantean being male, Lemurian being female?
It might be, but I would think that because much of it is not provable and much of it is not, there's lots of different stories. I would imagine that we can't really look at it from that perspective. But what you have described is Lemurian was very heart-centered and feminine, and they adored the feminine and growth and stuff. And then the Atlantean was very masculine head, thinking, critical. How do you do this? I want this too. So yeah, and it would be about right now where we are is integrating our masculine and feminine. And how that looks in the outer world is everyone's, I'm in the wrong body. But that's just what it looks like at the surface interpretation. But the reality is it's our inner masculine and feminine forces we're to integrate or not to reject.
Yes. That's brilliant. Gosh, that says it all. I interviewed Francis Xavier Aloisio. Yes, I'll say it again. Francis Xavier Aloisio, who wrote a series of books about the Atlantean energy in Malta, and he likens Malta to the solar plexus of Earth. And there's another one in Uluru in Australia as well. And so you've got the northern hemisphere aspect, solar plexus, and the southern hemisphere, and that's its job is to metabolize and alchemize all of our traumas, release all of that in terms of Earth's grids and ley lines.
Well, I went to Malta with Maria Wheatley. I don't know if you know her.
Yes, heard of her.
She's a dowser. Her dad was Dennis Wheatley, quite well-known author and dowser and into the paranormal in the UK. Well, I think globally, really. But anyhow, so she's really into dowsing. So we did a dowsing trip where we were just going to go around to the temples, and she was going to teach us about energy and how it flows and stuff. And at the time I went, it wasn't long after I'd broken my wrist, and it was like so painful, and I just really couldn't move it. And in the mornings, I'd be in pain, and we'd be all sitting in the minibus going to a temple. And then in the evening, especially on the first time it happened, Maria was just cracking up in the front. She says, listen to you guys. We were like we had taken a shot of Valium or something. We were so laid back and chilled. But more importantly, my hand was just completely loose and flexible. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I could actually use it. Of course, the next day it went back. But that was the expansion of the energy in the place. And she showed us with dowsing, and you could actually feel it. So definitely the land and the temples, and you could feel the feminine energy. It was just amazing. So yeah, I can see why you'd love Malta. You probably feel really good there.
I do. I feel awesome there. It's my mother home. I feel like it's my soul's home, if you will. And there's more megalithic sites there per capita than anywhere in the world.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Ah. Yeah. So apparently the Atlanteans, the Atlanteans, when Atlantis, was no more, they moved along to, I think Malta was one of the places.
Yes. Exactly.
But it's also got Lemurian energies there, because a lot of the feminine temples are Lemurian, apparently.
It really does. Yes, you kind of have brother-sister temples there that complement each other, and that integration that keeps coming up. What about Egypt? Have you been to Egypt?
Oh, my favorite place.
I had to ask you about Egypt before we end the conversation. I'm aware we've gone over.
Yeah, that's my go-to place. And I know I've had lots of lifetimes there.
Yep.
Yeah. I love Egypt.
What's your most mind-blowing experience from Egypt?
Gosh, there's so many. Right, I'll tell you this one. So we're still really good friends. So there's a friend I have that I met there. on a trip. We went on a trip that should have been 30 people, and there were like 67 of us by the time we got there. But as it turned out, we were all meant to be together because loads of us are still great friends. And so I was in one of the temples, and when I first walked into the temple, I looked over to the side, and I saw these steps that were really worn. I think it was Dendara. And the steps are really worn. I don't know why my eye caught the steps, but anyhow, we're following the tour guide and going through here and looking at this and that. And then we had some free time to ourselves. And so we just got to walk around. So I found myself in this one room with this person who we're quite good friends still. And a guard came, and this was before the revolution. And so the guards, they dressed in their galabeas and they looked like priests, really. And so one of them came and he was like signaling us and telling us shush. And they do it, I think, for the tips. But anyhow, so he was telling us that. And what he did was he took us to this back staircase and this back route that led us back to those steps that I saw. And so it was just the two of us and him. And so the steps led up and they kind of spiraled and got narrower and narrower until they got to a small room. So I pull out my camera, and the whole time I was walking up, I was kind of feeling this kind of dread feeling. I don't know why. But by the time we got into the room, I tried to take pictures and my camera wouldn't take any pictures. He tried with my camera, he tried with my friend's camera, and we couldn't take any pictures. So he said, well, we had to go. So on the way down, I said to my friend, we were talking, I actually recorded it, but we were talking just about how strange things was. And I can't remember what else we're talking about. But when we got outside, I know, we were talking about, I felt like we'd actually done a few naughty things in that place. And when we got outside, these two little birds, these sparrows, just came and flew right at our feet. And I just heard the word forgiveness. And I said to my friend, I said, did you hear that? She said, no, but she said, I felt those sparrows, the birds were for us. And so anyhow, so we went from there to the Osiris temple. And when we got there, there was, we had a dinner set out for us and everything. And then we were going to be led inside with, I can't remember his name, and this is quite a long time ago. And he was going to take us on a bit of a tour. He was a priestly man as opposed to just a guard, the caretaker of the temple. And so he took us to different places, and there were so many of us in the group that I was at the back. And I couldn't hear what he said, but the only word that jumped out was meditate for forgiveness. And so that just really jumped out at me again. And so what later happened, what I didn't tell you is when we had dinner, for some strange reason, a bee flew underneath my trousers and bit me on my knee. I mean, it was just like this big drama, because where did that come from? They're like, we don't even have these things happen. So there was that. So these little things were happening. And what happened at the very end of the day when we were leaving there, I was walking down, and it's a huge expanse of steps. And it was like I was taken right back to being a very arrogant, uppity priest, because we all were, because I could see, and it was like I was just taken back into time, and it was just a really poor village all around this grand temple. And we were in the temple making the villagers bring us offerings. There's underground steps and stuff. We would take the things off. I just knew this. There's underground tunnels, and we were just doing these things. I knew it. I felt it. And walking down the steps, I could just feel this pompous, self-righteous feeling, because we had and they didn't. And it was just like a flash through time. It was awful, really. It was very humbling, but I felt it. And that's exactly what we would have done as priests, because we were well fed. And you look at that system now, you'll have poor people bringing a tithe to the priests, and they'd be living in big houses, driving big cars, and people are struggling. That whole system and belief system, it's corrupt. And
to the core.
Yeah. And it might have started out good, that everything, because that's what happens when you give humans free will. Someone is going to want to get something over on someone else. Someone is going to want to get a bit more. And so look at where we are now. It's all about greed. And then you've got some, billionaires that think the more money they have, the more rights they have to control all other humans. It's the same system. As well as hiding knowledge, hiding information. It's the same, censoring.
Yes.
And so if you can see through the illusion of what they're creating with your acceptance of it, it has no impact on you. So even if you have to go out among the massed, you just energetically, it's like you're sharing a shared space, but you don't have to invest your emotions or blame them or dislike them, because that's where they are on their journey. And those who have aren't necessarily any better off. I'll tell you how I really learned that if you want to know.
Please.
Do you want to know this one?
I do.
So years ago, I used to do loads of past life regressions myself. I'd lay down on the bed and I'd do a past life. And I did this past life one time. And I was so skinny and my head was, I can still see it, my head was so huge. And I was this young boy and I must have been older than my age. And we were like a nomad people, just walking, and we were starving. And what they were doing at the group was the elderly and the young that couldn't maintain themselves, because everyone was too weak to carry them, they just left them behind. And I'll never forget it. So my head was big because I realized there was no meat on me. And I remember standing there and I had my stick to support me. And I was screaming in my head, but of course I was too weak to scream in my voice. And I was saying to them, but my spirit is still alive. My spirit is still alive. And that was it. It was like, wow. And it made me realize that it doesn't matter what the outside looks like. The spirit, the soul, it's whole and it's as much alive as anything that we think is perfect.
Yes.
But it's the story that a person's living that their body is a part of.
Wow. Hearing you recall some past lives makes me curious about the mechanics of past life recall. Do we recall the lives in archetypal form or otherwise that serve a therapeutic purpose in our now moment?
Yes, because if it's not connected to this lifetime energetically, vibrationally, frequency-wise, according to your templates and what you plugged into, it won't show up. So when people say, I've only had these lives, it's like, well, that's all you're shown. And that's because it connects somehow with your current life. And it is therapeutic in the sense that when we know more about ourselves, we feel less weird. It's like, oh, now I know why I feel the way I do or whatever. So self-knowledge is always grounding, actually, because it allows us to accept ourselves a little better.
And the old adage, knowledge is power.
Yeah, as self-power, empowerment. So,
self-empowerment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes. So going back to the prison planet thing, so I'm going to come full circle. We did finish the quick round. It was all kind of quick round. So thank you for that, Lorna. You've come full circle with me. I want to look at what to do when you die, because we hear a lot of fear-mongery stories. Oh, don't go to the light. Go to the light. Ask to be reconnected to source. Declare you're a child of God. What is your advice based on your myriad of regressions?
I think the Tibetan have it kind of down pat if you want to go with a masculine external preparation sense. But what people describe when they do past lives is they float away, they fly away, they drift away, but it's always there's a movement away. And also in very traumatic and tragic deaths, the spirit leaves the body before the body dies. For example, you'll have a soldier laughing because he's in the tree watching them attacking his body and saying, haha, they think they're getting me, but they're not. So you don't have to experience really anything painful. For example, if you listen to near-death experiences, once they're out of their body, they're like fine. It's when they decide to come back in that they're like in the body energy and the pain of the body. So for most people, we as past life regressionists, we don't really tell them what to do. We have to just follow what they do. And so most people do float or fly away. Some might decide they want to hang about. Those are mostly rare, or rarer for what shows up. But I don't really think that. I think the Tibetans, I would say, have it more down pat because they've studied it, where they'll tell you to go to the clear light to avoid all of the different little things that might suck you into another reality or something, because you've got to imagine that there's lots of, I guess, spirits hanging about death. So
Yes.
imagine, so for example, I did a workshop, not I as a teacher, as a student, with Spirit Release Workshop. And one of the focus on that weekend was teaching us, actually, you interviewed Andy. It was with Andy and Dr. Palmer, Terry.
Yes.
And so, yeah. And
I
so
spoke to Dr. Palmer recently as well.
Yeah, so they're brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the workshop a couple of years ago, and the focus for that weekend was on rescuing any earthbound spirits. And what was fascinating was places like the entryways of hospitals are portals.
Yeah.
Because many people are going there on the brink of death. Sometimes they die before they arrive. And sometimes when they arrive, they don't leave because they don't realize that they're dead. And then sometimes in hospitals, there's lots of spirits that are just wandering around that haven't moved on. And there's this one case, I can't remember if it was at the weekend or it was mentioned, but it's one case I heard of, that this little boy was just still stuck in the hospital bed because when mom left, she said, don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. And he died, and he's waiting for mom because she said, don't go anywhere. And so this is why rescue work is so important. But places like the hospital, mines, like cave mines, they're portals because so much death occurs in these places that you'll have these wayward spirits just kind of hanging about saying, oh, don't go to the light, come on over here, it's more fun. And so if energetically that's what I guess you're drawn to, or you don't feel worthy of the light, because religion in some cases tells you you're not worthy of going to the light. And just imagine, you've sinned. Maybe you looked at a Playboy, or maybe you stole a chocolate as a kid, or it could just be minor things.
All sinned, yeah.
But it could be minor, but in your mind, when you're dying, for some people, it's, I can't move on, or there's nothing there because religion tells me that there's not. Yes. So the belief systems will take you into that belief. However, when we're doing past life regressions, it's not that we look at the belief systems to see where people end up. We just follow what they say happens next. And we don't always follow them into all the things in the afterlife. We might just end that lifetime and explore another. It depends on the reasons that they're having a session. But also, you can follow them in if that's the case. Or if you ask them what happens next that's important to them, well, what happens in the afterlife might not be, but another lifetime that they're born into will be important. So, did that answer your question?
It did, definitely. Yeah. Quickly on this subject.
I would say, just on that subject, that for a dying person, don't be fearful in the last moments.
Yes.
Because your fear is what will make it worse for you, because you're going to block everything. And if you think about it, a lot of people, when they're dying or in the days leading up, they start describing loved ones who have gone by. Or nurses will tell you that their patients are talking to someone in the corner, or their faces light up and they're like, can't you see them? And it's because a support system comes in to help you to transition.
That was my next question. I was going to say, on the subject of transitioning, are we reunited with our loved ones? I think a lot of people want to know that.
Yes, but Tom Campbell, who I absolutely love his work, do you know him from My Big Toe?
Yes.
He's been a consciousness explorer since the early Monroe days when he was in uni. So he's got like 50 or more years. I don't want to age him, but I'm sure it's more years of his experience. And he says that effectively, sometimes it's not our loved ones, but spirit shows up in a guise that we can relate to. So imagine, for example, if your mother's moved on to different lifetimes or other places, you might have what seems to be your mother, but it's just that they're representing themselves in every way as your mother to help you ease the transition. So he sees all energy as collective rather than the individual, which is a concept that I can relate to.
I can't too. And then our experience would be a drop in that ocean that then we go back and access for future experiences, which would weave in nicely your concept of, we're only given what we need as skills to prepare us for the next step of our soul's journey. As opposed to, this is some kind of punishment rewards karmic system,
I think that whole karma thing, it came from the East. Yeah. They have a lot longer life on the planet. They're way more ancient than the West. However, when the West borrows things from the East, they like to give a Western spin to things. And so the meaning kind of changes, to suit the Western mind. And a lot of the Western mind has deep roots in Christianity or the Abrahamic religions. So they'll kind of twist things in a sense that we lose the authentic meaning. So the authentic meaning might be something along the lines of your vibrational energy and your creation, you're going to experience them, which isn't about punishment or suffering. It's just about bringing your energy back into balance. And if you do good things, you'll have good things happen to you, rather than, everything you do, you're going to get punished for.
You mentioned earlier heaven on earth.
And what do you want to know?
Well, I just suspect you have an interesting take on it.
I think those terms are kind of quite biblical, and so they're quite loaded in that it makes people feel that they can't have heaven because heaven is somehow, for the meek or for special people, or you've had to go to church or whatever. But my take on it would be our lives, we create either heavenly experiences and viewpoints, and we perceive that for others, and we allow them the space as well to be their own creators. Doesn't mean we have to go along with it, because we can choose not to, but we cannot deny them their stories. And hell is more of when we don't take responsibilities for ourselves and we keep blaming others, and we're living in a hell of waiting for someone to help us, rescue us, save us, or something. So it's more of hell is a trauma response.
Yes.
And heaven is a heart connection. There you go.
Oh, I love that. That sums it up perfectly. Thank you, Lorna.
And a heart connection, not that you have to love, because love is such a loaded word, but you have to like. Do you know?
I do.
I don't have to love myself, but I can like myself. I don't have to love you, but I can like you. I don't have to love the world, but I can like it. And the more I like things, the more I might feel that a love opens up in me that I couldn't have described or forced. But if I blame you for everything, then I'm giving away my power. And more importantly, I'm seeing in you the parts of myself I don't want to see, but I know what they look like outwardly. And so rather than blaming others, if we think, okay, well, what would happen? This is what I do with clients, actually. So imagine that you come and you've got all of these negatives, and this is wrong, and this is going on, and this person, and da 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 da. And then I say to you, we're in a duality system. What would happen if you flip the script and none of those things were happening? So you don't have this, and you don't have that, you don't have, and they're like, huh. And then suddenly it opens up what they can do. Do you know? So if I'm constantly all the things I can't do and I'm blaming and they didn't exist, it was like, number one, where's your identity? Because you've wrapped it so much in that. But number two, there's a certain freedom, because once you recognize that, then you can see where those things came from. It's like, oh, that's the family stuff. That's what they do in my family. Or that's a reaction to something that went on. Or, well, I can't change the past. I'll just leave them be and I'll just create what I want. So, yeah, if you flip the script, then you can kind of see what isn't immediately obvious. And we're never drawn to anything that's not already in our soul's history. And so what happens is when you flip the script, you connect to those timelines where you were the natural child, that you had free time and you did what you naturally did. So some natural ways for some children, they might be creative, they might invent. So that natural self-expression comes out. And that's what you want more of, because that's when you're most alive. And why you need to be alive within yourself is because it will expand your brain waves. When you're doing things you love, you will go into alpha. Yeah. That's the gateway of the inner world. And it's always problem solving. You never go into alpha or into your expansive states and find nightmares. You just don't. It's always problem solving, because it's connecting you back to your source of life. And it's always about answers and solutions. But when you're in the game, you can't see them. But when you disconnect, because physically, let's say you walk the dog every day. So as soon as you start walking the dog, you zone out. Or you do something so routine, you don't have to think of it. Bang, you go into what they used to call kids' daydreams. But you go into alpha, and it's like that connection and that awareness. But when you're in fear and focused on the external, you lose that, because you've shrunk your energy, you've condensed it, rather than being able to see what flows. Because suddenly when you're in alpha, it's like, you know exactly what you're going to do. You know exactly how about this, and answers and solutions come. And so that's why it's important to be in your body rather than in your head.
We've come back to the body. Is this whole business of spiritual awakenings a self-initiation?
Yes. Absolutely. And that's why it has to be self. I mean, people can run around and get an activation or someone initiate them, but that might be into a particular energy system or belief system, or, you know, like Reiki or something like that. But the self-initiation creates an alchemical response in your body that shifts you, because our bodies are alchemical machines. And so you cannot pretend spiritual growth or enlightenment.
No.
Because your body, exactly. And so you can't. And so you can say it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And that's where karma comes in, because you can't fool the historical records. That's pretty much like a photographic snapshot. You can't fool that. And so, yeah, self-acceptance.
Acceptance is the answer.
Yes. And then that opens up other things. But what I always like people to understand more than anything else is that every single thing about us that we think of as our personality, they're coping strategies that we picked up along the way. Or we're living our mother's stuff or our father's, the family pattern. And they're coping strategies because we react to everything and we cope. And we tell ourselves things about ourselves our personality, but it's not. They're coping strategies. And so deep self-exploration is really liberating. Going into your soul's history and seeing why things are, or why you have your family, or the background, or a connection with a certain person, or plans for the future, any of that. It's so liberating because you realize you're not crazy. You realize all the things in your life has been connected to a bigger picture. So imagine if you're walking down the street or in physical life, all you can see is what your physical eyes can take in. Whether you're looking down, up, around, behind you, that's all that you know. And then look at the difference when you're in an airplane. And it's like, wow, you can see the horizon that goes on forever. You can see how all these isolated dots and things in your life are connected to something else. And so that's the difference with opening up more awareness, creating new thoughts, changing your mind, and then your life follows. And so without acceptance, that's not going to happen, because if you don't have self-acceptance, you're not going to accept anyone else having the freedom to have their experience. Doesn't mean you have to like what they do. Doesn't mean you have to even have them in your space. It just means they're on their own journey. They don't have to share space with me, but they're fine. And the more you're able to stop judging others, the more you realize you've been accepting yourself. Because the things that you judge in others, it's like we speak to ourselves. We speak to ourselves, we see ourselves everywhere, because that's how consciousness knows itself. So I found it easy or easier to get rid of a lot of judgments or past things with asking a simple question, especially it's connected to childhood stuff that's like, you're always working on at some point in your life. Even if you had a great childhood, there was always something you might want to differently.
Oh, yeah.
And I would always think, well, or if you think I had a dreadful mother, father, he wasn't there, or this or that or the other. And then you then have to ask yourself the question, well, do I feel the way I do because that's the way they were? Or was it that because of how I am, I had to have those parents? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that opens up more thoughts, and then you see where you can make adjustments, and you realize, well, wait a second, those parents are also products of their parents or their time or their generation. Or so it's you start depersonalizing, and that's how you can get back to yourself, because otherwise everything is a personalized belief.
That's
and
right.
It's not true.
That's the ultimate leveler. The word humility comes to mind.
Growth, I think, can be very humbling.
Can't it just? Well, that's a brilliant place to end, in my humble opinion. Do you have any other words of wisdom you'd like to bestow upon us tonight?
I don't know, really, what is wise and wisdom. But if I were to say anything to people in general, I'd say start depersonalizing your life. Start realizing your life is a compilation of family patterns, other people's stuff, your experiences, and that given your experiences, you are completely normal, every single one of us. And then once you can accept that, you can start liking yourself. For example, if you say you got to love yourself and self-love, that is such a loaded word. It's like, what do you mean? Impossible.
People can't start there.
No. You know where I actually learned that? I learned that from my youngest daughter when she was 5. She said, tell me you like me, Mommy. Don't tell me you love me.
Wow.
And immediately when she said that, light bulbs went off. And I knew in that moment, in my situation, if my mother had said that, I would have been like, nothing about this shows love. Whereas if she had said, I like you. And so what I did for every night after that, I would come up with different reasons why I liked her. Because I couldn't tell her what I told her the night before. And it was such an amazing exercise. And it really reinforced to me that people, you can't love yourself because you think you're unlovable, you think this, you got all these programs running. But if you can find the things about yourself you like, then everything changes. So start liking yourself. It's like gratitude, you know, it doesn't have to be anything big. You just might like that you're a generous person. Do you know? It's these little things that build and open up our full potential.
It all boils down to the heart.
Yeah. Everything about earth is the heart. I mean, if you think about numerology and you spell the word earth and heart, it's the exact same letters.
Yes.
Same with live and evil.
And evil. Yes.
Same with creative and reactive.
And one I learned today was fears and safer. Same letters.
Oh, there you go.
Another good one.
If you look at the duality system, it's all there.
Yes.
But it depends on the perspective that you use it. Do you know?
Yes, it does.
Or how you change it. It's about changing it. So it doesn't have to be one or the other, but it can be both. So it doesn't have to be this or that, but it can be both.
I call that the PowerPoint and paradox.
That both?
Yeah, holding both at the same time. It's okay.
Eldest children find that really hard to do because they're wired to be stuck in this or that.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that we cannot do or we find hard to do, it's a part of our wiring. It's not because we're who we are. And so the challenge is to discover why you're wired that way. Do you know, what is the point? Why would Creator or my soul see any benefit in this situation or making me the way that I am? I had a client once who's from a musical family, and it fascinated me. And so in her session, she was taken back to the womb. And then in a moment of shock, I can't remember quite what she said, but she discovered her brain was not wired normally. And in that moment, it was almost like having the worst bad news. But I know everything always serves a better purpose than we can imagine. So when I had her explore why her brain was like that, she cracked up laughing. And she said, it's what makes me musical. And that's why my whole family were wired like that. So why that sticks out is because that's like, whoa. Do you know? So I love these things you learn. But think about if we were to accept the way we were and to find the good in it, how much more empowered we'd be, how everything would change. So I wouldn't look at my ADD, let's say, for example, as a curse because my teachers made me stand in the corner and no one could understand me. I would look at it, well, why is my brain wired that way? What's the benefit? Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It just popped into my mind. It's almost another of those problem, reaction, solutions. So problems created in our mind, it creates a reaction with us, but the solution, it's like a story. Once upon a time, blah, 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 and she or he lived happily ever after. And to be honest, I think the higher beings that run this system just have a laugh. And they're like, look at them. Throw that in the mix and let's have a giggle and see what they do. Because really, when you think about it, there's loads of paradoxes.
Oh,
there's loads of cosmic jokes.
Oh, the contradictions are endless.
So anyway, yeah, that would be what I would leave people with. Begin to find the ways to like yourself and breathe deeply into your body. It's all that's needed.
And it came up earlier, you are hardwired for your life. So have faith in that. Mm-hmm. A very special reason, always. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to the divine blueprint, I call it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lorna, where can people find you?
Well, I've got a website. I can give you that information. You can drop it under.
Yeah, I'll pop it in the description.
Yeah, I've got a Facebook group still, but I don't know how long I'll be on there. And the funny thing is, because Facebook's designed for dopamine hits, even though I'm registered on a few other places, I just find it's like habit and, dropping in on Facebook. But really, I think, to be honest, Facebook, everyone's kind of moving away. But besides that, yeah, my website would be best, and there's a contact link.
Okay. Brilliant. And there's new platforms opening up all the time, like Telegram, there's Rumble, there's BitChute. I mean, it depends on what you want to do, more video or more social media.
Yeah, I've got Telegram, but I've got to figure out, because you probably heard a pop-in, beeping sound ever so often. I've got to figure out how to stop them sending
actually. I didn't hear it. No.
Brilliant.
Good. Well, Lorna,
okay.
I just want to thank you for such a rich conversation and for your wisdom and your time and your energy and your efforts. A huge, huge heartfelt thank you. I'm in deep gratitude and wishing you so much love. Namaste to you. And I hope to see you soon in person as well, because I need a session. Another one.
Thank you. Yeah. Take care. Thanks for having me.
You too.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.